I can't think of a single person who doesn't at least like the idea of superheroes. They're a bunch of powerful pals who fly around helping people out. The best ones are selfless, empathetic guardians who diligently watch over their city. All around, pretty wholesome folk. But what would happen if our relationship to superheroes changed? If they stopped being a helpful group of super people and became a product? And I don't mean if their likeness becomes an action figure. Please, we've seen that story before. I mean, what if the heroes themselves became commodities, products to be bought and sold in a market? Would that not fundamentally taint how we interact with superheroes? Lucky for us, this isn't just a thought experiment. The Boys shows us just how horrifying it would be if the free market got a hold of superheroes. I'm not one to oversimplify, but if I were to pinpoint a single message to the Boys, it'd be anti-corporate. From obnoxious marketing guys hyping up how bold this skimpy dress is, to management obsessed with appealing to specific demos, The Boys spends a lot of its runtime criticizing our corporatized world. The obvious critique of corporate BS is seen through the women and the queer heroes. Starlight comes to the Seven, this universe's Justice League, optimistic and wide-eyed, but she quickly finds her body objectified. Her modest outfit gets exchanged for this revealing suit, because its sex appeal sells better to a general audience. On the flip side though, when she speaks at a Christian conference, they put her back in the modest outfit. Point is, no matter the situation, her body isn't her own. It's become company property.
I have the right to choose how much of it I show.
That is true, you do. You just won't be doing it in the Seven, unless it is wrapped in that.
Likewise, and a mild spoiler for Season 2, Maeve is ripped of agency over her own sexuality, as it's twisted into marketing gold. Homelander unexpectedly reveals on live TV that Maeve has a girlfriend, and corporate jumps at the opportunity to market being inclusive. They'd already been leaning into excessively cringe girl boss energy.
Don't worry. Girls get it done.
But now they can market a lesbian girl boss. At least, that's how Vought sells Maeve's sexuality, but in reality, she's bisexual.
You know Maeve is bi, right?
Yeah, you know what? I just feel like lesbian is a bit of an easier sell, a bit more cut and dry.
On top of that, the way the couple dresses is manufactured by corporate. Elena is told to wear a business suit because, and I quote,
Pew Research shows that two feminine women in a relationship sends a problematic message.
Yeah, this isn't penthouse form.
Americans are more accepting of gays when they're in a clear-cut gender role relationship.
Even in being openly queer, Maeve is still put in a restrictive box, because what matters to Vought is not honesty or preserving her well-being. What matters to them is maximizing profits off her sexuality. And that pursuit of profits necessitates stripping her of agency, as it's the market that determines how her image is portrayed, not her self-actualization. I mean, you can't sell overpriced Vought brand meatless lasagna with Maeve's face on it if it turns out that she, as a bi woman, sometimes likes a little meat in the bedroom. Go ahead, keep booing me, it only makes my jokes worse. But these examples, while dehumanizing, are familiar to us. We're used to women's bodies being objectified, and we're used to companies virtue signaling on social issues. And that normalcy might make it all sound heckin' valid, ooh-woo. But the Boys' critique of commodification goes beyond what we're used to. It shows the inevitable horror if superheroes as a sector, if you will, were privatized and commodified. To truly dive in to what the Boys can teach us about commodities, we'll have to venture a bit deeper than lady have to wear sexy pant. That's right, kids, it's theory time. To do so, let's define our terms up front, namely what I mean by the commodity form. The commodity form is the process by which, in market economies, things are turned into products to be bought and sold. Some mistake commodity to mean all objects, which isn't correct, but it's an important distinction to make. Let's unpack the differences. So like berries, these juicy little boys, they exist out in nature. When they're out there chilling on the vine, they're not commodities, they're just, well, berries. Now if I pick some of them and sell them at a farmer's market, or if I turn them into a delicious jelly and sell them at my coffee shop, I turn them from a resource into a commodity. See, in America, we kind of assume everything's birthed ready to be bought and sold, but it really is a process. And keep in mind, turning something into a commodity doesn't always involve a physical transformation. Like I could just put an electric fence around the berry bush and through scarcity and limited access, turn them into a commodity. I don't have to make them into jelly for it to be a commodity. That may sound like a silly distinction, but it'll be relevant to us in a minute. And sure, maybe through the process of turning something into a commodity, you get a slightly better result. Like maybe people look after the berries better when they have a financial interest in their survival. But even if there is some improvement, the freedom of access is lost. The simple pleasure of enjoying a berry without running into a paywall. And much like before, through our familiarity with this mode of production, it can feel normal. But maybe that's a bad example to start with, mainly because it seems a lot of Americans seem to struggle to understand food being a public good. It has always been a commodity for us, and therefore it's hard to imagine outside of that bubble. So instead of trying to explain how the commodity form functions through something we mostly experience as a commodity, let's talk about the process in relation to something that we understand as a public good: firefighters. Now, why would it be such a problem for firefighters to just become a part of the free market, you might ask? Well, it's because when the service you're providing is so dire, like, putting out fires, and you put said service behind a paywall, you not only create a potential market of extortionists, folks who profit off the threat of a burnt house, but you guarantee some folks can't afford it and leave them shit out of luck. And this isn't just fear-mongering or unfounded speculation. This literally happened in ancient Rome. Marcus Licinius Crassus, in the spirit of American ingenuity that would be cultivated centuries later, used his old-timey free market ingenuity to innovate a fire brigade. And then he promptly used it to extort money from people when their houses were burning down, because of course that's going to happen when you go up to somebody's, again, burning house and say, "I can help you out here," for a price. Now thankfully, leaders in Rome eventually saw the flaws in this system and moved to fund a firefighting brigade that was a public good, to take, the extortion side out of that. But had this process gone in the other direction, had firefighting initially been a public good that some Reaganite came around and privatized, that, folks, could be understood as the commodity form in action. It's the process of taking a resource or a public good and privatizing it, under the guise of improving the service, but all of a sudden putting a paywall between that service and everyday folks. And I think imagining firefighting getting privatized fits well with discussions about the boys, not just because firefighters are the real heroes out there, but also because I don't know if I could think of a more universally loved public service than firefighters. By taking superheroes, people seen as beacons of goodness who are just here to help the public, and by centering the story around modern financialization practices, The Boys makes one point incredibly clear. A for-profit superhero industry would ruin superheroes as we know them. As we've envisioned them for most of history, superheroes are basically a public good. There's no moneyed barrier to accessing their services. They're just helpful people who show up where they're needed, when they're needed. But in The Boys, once Vought gets a hold of the heroes, they're no longer free-roaming do-gooders, they're products. And again, I don't just mean their likeness is commodified, I mean their services become a product to be bought and sold. And The Boys make sure to point out how turning this once selfless act into a paid service completely ruins our relationship to superheroes. Because when superheroism is incentivized to make decisions based off profit instead of well-being, disaster follows. One example comes from a botched plane rescue. While stopping terrorists on a plane, the last one kills the pilot, which causes Homelander to beam the control panel, which, believe it or not, makes landing the plane impossible. Having no way to save everyone, Maeve suggests Homelander fly up and down a few times to at least save some people, but Homelander decides it's best to leave everyone to die, because the survivors would probably go onto TV to explain how Homelander fucked up, or worse, they might leave a bad Yelp review, and since both of those would hurt Vought's profits, those outcomes need to be avoided at all costs. Now, someone might argue that's too close to a concern for public image to claim Homelander was driven by profit. It could have been a decision made to protect his ego, they might say. And I can see how someone would say that if they hadn't seen the show. Because if you had, I'd expect you to remember that during this episode, Vought was trying to score a multi-billion-dollar defense contract to put superheroes in the military. So a story as blatantly bad for public relations as Homelander got cocky and blew up the control panel, maybe we really can't trust these superheroes, would immediately threaten the defense contract and, therefore, hurt Vought's bottom line. Plus, in a press conference right afterward, Homelander immediately lies and says that they weren't there in an attempt to build up good PR to rally support behind the defense contract.
We arrived 3 minutes after the plane went down. Because we're not in the chain of command. If they let us into the military, then this will never happen again. That is my solemn promise to you.
With those stakes and Homelander's helpful attitude towards Vought's bottom line, it's impossible to separate his choice to leave everyone behind from profit-driven motives. Another example comes early in Starlight's tenure at Vought. While walking home one night, she hears commotion in an alley. I'm going to blur the video here because it's pretty graphic, but Starlight walks up to an attempted rape. She, like the badass that she is, beats the shit out of the guys, but the next day, corporate is freaking out at her because a clip of her punching the guys went viral, but said video cut off the part where they were attempting a rape. Corporate basically says that Starlight shouldn't have stepped in to help if she wasn't absolutely sure there was a camera filming the whole time, because that's the only way for Vought to ensure that their bottom line doesn't take a hit. Meaning the company's preferred response is for Starlight to have left that lady to be raped, specifically because it's the outcome that wouldn't hurt their profits. This is exactly the kind of perverse incentive we could expect if superheroes got commodified. Saving people's no longer the goal, it's just about selling the image of safety while maximizing profits. Speaking of out-of-whack priorities, Vought has its heroes do very little, actual heroism. Starlight complains a couple times that they don't do much crime stopping in their crime-stopping supergroup. Well, you see, Starlight, you petulant little child, you can't be out there stopping too many baddies. You gotta be on set in the morning and doing cable TV interviews at night. It's just too hard to fit crime fighting into your schedule. Because the people making decisions at Vought are contractually obligated to produce as much value for shareholders as possible, the heroes spend most of their time filming some product for Vought, talking on TV about the product they just filmed, or doing some paid speaking gig on behalf of Vought. Even the most egotistical hero in regular comics isn't this focused on money, because those heroes at least have to produce results. But Vought doesn't exist to produce results. It exists first and foremost to be a brand. And if they just so happen to produce some results on the side, that's fine, but that's not what Vought's concerned about. So here, we once again see that making heroes a product can quickly ruin what drives heroes to be super. And finally, we see the horrors of commodified superheroes in their assignments. Not like homework, where they're placed on duty. Normally, heroes either protect their hometown, move to a city that has a bunch of crime, or join a superhero group that responds to threats all over the place. And while big cities draw heroes the most, it's not a matter of profit, more so a person just gauging where they're needed most. And most importantly, none of the heroes sit down with a mayor to discuss prices for their services. Like I said, heroes exist for the public good. But once you get the profit motive into the mix, once you involve a multi-billion-dollar company, a hero service becomes a security contract. And that seemingly simple exchange ruins superheroes. We see this through contract negotiations for Nubian Prince. You heard that right, superhero contracts are bartered in this universe. Baltimore's mayor comes in asking for a hero, as he reports high crime in his city, and it turns out Vought has a great candidate for him. Nubian Prince, a hero who can speak to the struggles of the city's African American population. So we have a city in need of a hero and a hero available, who would, according to Vaught's market research, be well liked by Baltimore's citizens. In a normal superhero world, Nubian Prince could just go there. But in this universe, since his services are a product, a contract to be leased, Baltimore has to fork over enough tax dollars to meet the high demand for Nubian Prince. It's said that Atlanta is in talks to buy him out as well, so the price for his service rises. Now, let's sit for a second and acknowledge how dystopian the idea of heroes only being available for hire is. Superheroism is no longer a selfless act for the betterment of a city. It no longer flows naturally to the cities that need it most or to heroes' hometowns. It now goes to the highest bidder. Just think of what that does not only to poorer countries, but to smaller townships. Des Moines, Iowa, where Starlight's from, could use her help. Unfortunately, like a lot of the Midwest, it has an opioid problem. As good-natured as she is, I'm sure she could make positive change, not just by disrupting the black market, but through community outreach. But because superheroism is a market, because her powers are a marketable skill that can fetch her generational wealth, she gets drawn to where the money is, which leaves any city, county, or country that can't afford the high market prices shit out of luck. But even that side argument is a bit of a distraction from the larger point that I really don't want to get away from. They're fucking leasing superheroes. Holy shit! They turned the Justice League into a for-profit industry. Like, I don't even think I possess the words to properly articulate how disgusting this is. The immediate and unavoidable implications of turning superheroes into a for-profit industry directly contradicts the point of superheroes. Superman is supposed to hear a person getting attacked from across the city and go help. He's not supposed to fly to city limits and say to the victim across the street in a different town, "Well, ma'am, if you'd like our protection, be sure to contact your mayor and tell him to purchase the Vought Premium Package." That's just blatantly inhumane and ghoulish. This corporate nonsense doesn't improve the industry or create safer cities, quite the opposite. It keeps folks like Starlight from actually helping people, and it makes cities less safe by putting all this red tape and paywalls around the act of heroism. In short, commodification would ruin superheroes. Americans are numb to commodification. Our lives are defined by our ability to access cheap pieces of plastic. We're the only developed nation to not take steps toward making healthcare a public good. And when you're in the thick of it, when it becomes all you've ever known, it can be hard to see red flags or to imagine anything else. Which is where The Boys comes in. In its sharp indictment of corporate America, it reveals how horrifying it can be to commodify something. Superheroes, a thing for all of comic book history assumed to be a public good, get turned into a product to be bought and sold, and, in the process, rip superheroes of everything that makes them super. They make decisions based off Vaught's bottom line, not what's best for the actual people. Their services go to the highest bidders instead of those in need. The whole industry is rotten to the core, at the very expense of the same citizens it's supposedly going to provide a better service for. And if we can see how commodifying a useful public good like superheroes leads to toxic territory, well, maybe we can start to see how commodifying other essential markets can lead to similarly disastrous consequences. And if after watching all this, you're thinking to yourself, "Damn, Piley, that does sound kinda shitty. Well, how do we stop this whole commodity thing in real life?" Don't you worry, folks. In the coming weeks, I'll make a video talking about decommodification and degrowth, so we can avoid future the boys-like catastrophes. So, if that interests you, it's in your best interest to smash that motherfucking subscribe button, folks. But yeah, that's about all I have to say for this video. Be sure to toss me a like and subscribe down below. But if you really want to help me out, you can join me over on Patreon. Patrons get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content, like early versions of every video, and exclusive Patreon-only videos. Plus, if you join the Piley Benton's Biggest Boys tier, you get your name read off at the end of every video, which I am about to do once I pull up the names. Zoth, Sean Locke, Revo Pregame, Nillik Elites, Floof Pants, and Cameron Fordo. So if you want to hear your lovely name read off at the end of every video, be sure to join me on this specific tier. Also, just wanted to let y'all know that this Monday, July 5th, will be 1 year to the day since I posted my first 2 YouTube videos. In honor of my 1-year anniversary with this hell site, I'm going to stream a reaction to those first 2 videos, reflect on their content, that sort of thing, and then we'll wrap up by playing some more Pokemon, so be sure to tune in. Thanks much, everyone, and I'll see you next time.